Irish Spring cleans a man up right.
Oh, hello. I'm Bishop Davidson, and we are Between Two Ferns. Today, we have Mr. Edmund Burke with us, a member of British Parliament. If you don't mind, Mr. Burke, we'd like to jump right in. What are your thoughts on the French Revolution? The French have gone absolutely bonkers, although that doesn't surprise anyone now, does it? I mean, come on, totally unoriginal. They're just copying the Americans, but they have no leader. Their leader is fear, frustration, desperation. They've reverted to a state of nature, and it seems Hobbes was right. You mentioned the Americans. What makes the revolution in France much different from the War of American Independence? Aren't you contradicting yourself? What keeps a person from comparing you to the Donald? Just to clarify, I don't support the Americans as much as I oppose the British. There was a long tradition of lax English colonial policy in the decades leading up to 1763, so naturally, when our government tried to impose certain acts upon them, and we broke that tradition, that relationship we had previously enjoyed, they got upset. It's not about freedom, but the events and circumstances leading to that freedom. The Americans were ready for their liberty. These radicals in France have no such experience. What is liberty without wisdom and without virtue? It is the greatest of all possible evils, and those evils are manifesting in Paris as we speak. So there's no process in France like there was in America. You mentioned this in that letter you wrote, Reflections on the Revolution in France. I'm sure you've seen Rights of Man, the response by Tom Paine. Well, as pronounced by his title, he claims you don't believe there are any rights of man. How do you respond? You mean that rabble-rousing gypsy of a drunkard? What do I care what he has to say? But to answer your question, this is not a matter of the rights by revolution, but rights by evolution. Otherwise, you end up losing those very rights you were off to pursue in the first place. The march of the human mind is slow. Paine is a man stuck in the future. He has no concern for tradition or the past, and as we know, those who don't know history are destined to repeat it. And now we see France repeating chaos as we Europeans have seen before. Well, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Mr. Burke, and thank you to our viewers. We'll see you back here next week, Between Two Ferns.
And welcome to the great debate of political policy and philosophy. Tonight we're going to hear from some of the most well-known political thinkers of our day. We have with us Thomas Paine, failed statemaker and rabble-rousing pamphleteer. Also here tonight with us is the great Edmund Burke, member of British Parliament and critic of the French Revolution. Let's get started. For our first question of the night, if you are in a government bent on oppressing the citizens, decided to take action, what action would you take?
Interesting question. Well, it's obvious that action must be taken. A government that abuses 97% of its poor citizens to favor its 3% of wealthy nobles is not a government built for stability. But in order to fight the injustices, we must look to our infrastructure and rebuild. We have to remain dignified and level-headed in such adversity. Rash decisions and sudden changes are detrimental to the growth of a civilized nation and could result in tyranny. Bent on self-destruction, a broken house is not fixed with a raging inferno, but rather reform and carpenter suited to fixing and preservation.
Waiting is not the answer, Mr. Burke. To expect the top to respect the bottom with reform is naive and childish. If change is demanded by the powerless, they have to overthrow the ones that have power, which requires force and swift action. To wait for government to change is to wait for the sky to change to purple. Change must be forced swiftly.
Radical. But what is the point of fighting for freedom when forcing that freedom tends to the loss of that freedom? It just doesn't make any sense. On that scale, any action taken too quickly could be irrational and dangerous. To build a new civilization by tearing down the parts of an already civilized society is hypocritical at best and deadly at the worst.
There's been a lot of debate on natural rights amongst our people. I know you two have spoken your beliefs in public, but for the audience's sake, can you expand on your beliefs?
Well, when I think of rights, I think of them bound to a society. Natural rights are dangerous, and since they're too abstract, they can be taken to the extremes, as we see with Mr. Paine here. As I mentioned in my letter, Reflections on the Revolution in France, by having a right to everything, they want everything.
Your ideas are absurd.
Inequality is normal
in the society. Not about feel lucky, but about
Good evening. This is Justin Klocke reporting live from the field on the Burke and Paine dispute. In recent days, the arguments between Edmund Burke and Thomas Paine have grown intense. Americans know Paine best for common sense, with its legendary assault on monarchy and its liberating call for independence. Arguably, the Burke, whom we should know best, is the brilliant parliamentary critic of the many errors the British government committed in America before 1776. There is no sharper assessment of everything George III and his ministers were getting wrong about America than Burke's famous March 1775 speech for reconciliation. Yet the Paine and Burke we know have recently split in their friendship, due to their interest to another revolution, the upheaval that erupted in France in July 1789. Both men took up the pen and began what we like to call today the Great Debate. Burke's reflections on the revolution in France denounced the destructive tendencies the French seemed bound to release. In direct response, Paine published Rights of Man in 2 volumes in March 1791 and in February 1792. For English-speaking readers, these works framed the basic debate over the French Revolution that dominated politics and political thinking on both sides of the Atlantic for the next decade and longer. I have with me here today one supporter of Burke and one supporter of Paine, conveniently living in the same house. Good evening to you both. Let's start with you, Bernard. What makes you such an adamant supporter of Edmund Burke?
well. I feel that Mr. Burke understands the problems of rapid and radical change in France. He understands that if you want things to change, then it must be evolutionary and not revolutionary.
But many have questioned Burke's views towards rights. He seems to have conflicting views about them at some times.
Not really. When it comes to rights of an individual, they are bound to a national framework that evolves around one society. Yes, they may be unequal in some cases, but this is because inequality is all around us.
That brings up the question of equality. Josiah, why does Paine appeal to you, and how do you feel about his beliefs on equality?
Well, first of all, I gotta thank you for putting it on your show. No, one thing is that Paine, he don't use all the fancy words that you hear him speaking out there. And I can really get down and understand him. But most of all, we're all equal. That's just number one right there. I don't know what he's spewing.
The only thing that's natural is inequality. Look around us. No one is truly equal to the man they're standing next to. In fact, why should we even waste our time and talk about equality and pointless things like that? There are more important and pressing issues we should be attending to, like breakfast.
But surely you think liberty is an important issue. Liberty is an essential part of the English Constitution.
Yes, you are right. But liberty is dependent on other parts of society. it is only one element of society. Before it comes order, justice, and regard for property. For liberty to exist, all of those things must work together and balance out, like bacon and eggs.
Josiah, your thoughts on liberty?
Well, first of all, I'm probably with Burke is basically everything he just said. I didn't understand it, and I didn't understand it. But shoot, liberty, you either have it or you have it. This is how it is.
All right.
But I believe in two things mainly. That's freedom and equality.
All right. Well, I have one more question for you both. Bernard, how do you feel about constitutions?
Well, I'm going to use some more big words. I hope that's okay. They're reflections of the societies you live in. And any simpleton would know that. And they must concentrate around the natural orders that society creates. Without this fundamental truth, anarchy will be given free rein.
Well, what are your thoughts about Bernard's views?
I got three words for you. I got freedom, equality, and freedom.
Well, that's all the time we had. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with me tonight. I'm Justin Klocke, reporting live.
It's a free breakfast.
Welcome back to Thursday Night Football. Of course, the top story of this week is Rex Ryan. The former head coach of the New York Jets was forcibly removed from office by angry New York Jets fans after a very poor start to the season. Because of this, there is currently no head coach standing on the Jets' sideline today. Well, let's see how that fares out. Sanchez takes the snap. Ooh, oh dear. Oh, well, got me crazy, but I think the Jets are worse off now.
Mr. Paine, you are woefully misguided. Without classes, especially an elite class, a government would fall apart. A monarchy, along with this, is important for stability and prosperity. All people can be happy within their own social and economic class.
It's strange how the elite class advocates for a powerful elite class.
For our final question of the night, I'd like to talk to the two of you about your recent falling out. Recently, we've been noticing that tension between the two of you in your writings, especially in your rights of man, Mr. Paine. Earlier today, on Between Two Ferns, Mr. Burke, you said that Mr. Paine is the man stuck in the future. He has no concern for tradition or the past. Can you respond, Mr. Paine?
Well, I would say that there is no shame in being fixed in progress. The French Revolution shows us the world is intent on gaining natural rights that should be granted equally to all of us. So yes, I am stuck in the future. Tradition, such as what Mr. Burke advocates for, is simply dangerous.
Well, equally as dangerous would be to shed our traditions completely. There's a reason that tradition has gotten us to this point. It's because it works. Some people don't want a madman, like you, Mr. Paine, running around disrupting the lives of people who are perfectly happy working within their means. The last thing that society needs is chaos just because of a few radicals. You just simply can't have the right to tear down the fabric of society with no justification. You just can't.
You can. A little revolution is just what society needs to ensure people's rights are maintained, that the law and government applies to everyone equally, and that the foundation of government comes from the people and have their best interests in mind.
That got heated there, much like the fires of the French Revolution, 'cause they're bending it down over there in France. Stay tuned for more chaos, 'cause it seems like the heads are about to start rolling. I'm Lady Abigail Thorpe. Thanks for watching. Good night.